The silent rock, I warm it by my hand. In silence hear a resonance. Sometimes I ask myself the question how to revive Circassian Renaissance. My people, small and suffering for centuries, he walked along the blade of knife, he got world flame, and after all lived always weathering the honor. I will not tire of amusing this dream, that fate will give us chance again, and I believe this dream is not beyond the mountain, and we will see Circassian Renaissance. From ages of darkness our morals will return, and our highland and unwritten added. Envious people will again want reprisals. Today the drunkenness and debauchery are fashion, all this immoral foundation imbalances creates among Circassians. The day will come and, as the Troy's invader, wake up in us Circassian Renaissance. So the first owl on the way of our expedition is the Bolshoe and Pseushkho of the Tuapse region. Today we visited this owl, recorded a lot of interesting information from the locals and will share it with you. What I would like to note, firstly, is the history and toponymy. Regarding the word Pseushkho, there are different versions. I am inclined to the version of the historian Madin Tesha from Tuapse, who translated this word as clear blue water. At least the translation of the word Pse is undeniable. As for the Circassian settlement name Shoiku, according to one version, its translation sounds like a dirty bulk. Perhaps this is due to the stream, which is small but very much bottled as at certain. Even in the 91st year there was a huge flood. Modern owl Bolshoe and Pseushkho unfortunately dying. The fact is that here leads the road through the ridge. Previously it was very much covered with snow in winter, and when flooding happened, it was flooded very much. It was generally difficult to get here, but the owl Maloye Pseushkho stands a little closer to the main highway in a gentler terrain. It's easier to get there, and naturally most of the young people moved there in due time, and in Bolshoe and Pseushkho basically only older people, pensioners, remain. During the Soviet era there were large tourist paths. People came from Apsheronsk, but this is such a serious and categorical tourism, it's not so vigorously developed now. Now singles go, groups do not go on such large roads. Therefore, even this part has disappeared. Today, the road to Bolshoe and Pseushkho is being built, construction is underway, but it's not known how relevant it is now for local residents. 50 families live in the village. Approximately, most of them are Shapsugs, and only one family knows that it seems like Russia. It is also largely due to the fact that the locals prefer not to sell their homes, even simply leaving them behind, they are abandoned. They are not sold because their family memory. They do not want to sell these houses to visitors. Our Bolshoe and Pseushkho got its name from the river of the same name. In the old days it was the largest owl of the Circassian-Shapsugs on the coast, but today it dies and is the smallest of all. Officially about 100 people live here, mostly pensioners. Locals say that the lack of work led to the relocation of young families to other places closer to cities and roads. Today a good road leads through the pass to the village, but before that it was often covered with snow in winter. The owl is connected by a dirt road to the valley of the river Ashe in the area of the Kalezh village, but today the timber tracks have severely broken it. Families from the village of Najigo and the villages of Tsypka and Galvinka come from the Bolshoe and Pseushkho. In Soviet times there lived an elder who said, "One day the big will become small and the small will become large." As a result, this is what happened. The Maloye small Pseushkho owl become bigger. It is in Bolshoe and Pseushkho that today you can still find old houses of the era of the middle of the 20th century. Many of them are abandoned. The locals, after leaving the city, are in no hurry to sell the houses, as they consider them to be ancestral home and their personal memory. In the village there is a functioning mosque, restored on the site of once destroyed in 1930. In appearance is the work of Imam Batmis Khalahov, who hails from this owl, but it's not very popular. The huge mountain pears picturesquely hangs over the owl from the south. Bolshoe and Pseushkho cannot compete with the coastal owls of tourist attraction, and there is not enough water here in summer, but Peos Mountain is considered as a potential ski resort. The road to the village goes through the pass and along the river Mechmes. Here there are fields of hazelnuts, pastures, and sacred oak and sacred blacks. According to a local historian and archaeologist from Tuapse and Maloye, as a native of the Bolshoe and Pseushkho, Mechmes is associated with the activities of Magomed Amin, who tried to bring Shapsugs to a strict form of Islam. Allegedly, on the bank of the river, Mechme, the same as the Murtazek, People's Guard. For these purposes he built a mosque, but the Shapsugs burned it. Our Bolshoe Pseushkho had the second Circassian name Shoiku, dirty valley, Shoi dirty, Ko valley. This name belongs to the river Bolshoe Pseushkho. Meretukov translates term Pseushkho as clear river, from the Circassian Psi, water, river, and Ushkho, clean. Teshev regards the name Pseushkho as the primary name, writes it Pseushkho, and translated from Circassian Psi as water and Ushkho to make bands, watershed. Kokov gives only presumptive versions of the translation of the Pseushkho toponym blue water or foaming water. According to Leonid Lavrov, the ancestors of the owl Bolshoe Pseushkho, people inhabited Naujinskoye Gorge, from wherein they were resettled to the river Laba in the area of village Dondukovskaya. Al-Hajmukhohab, 16th of the 19th century, they were allowed to return to the Black Sea coast and they settled in the present place. A large detachment of Shapsugs, among whom were quite a few representatives of the Shkhalakov family, set out on a journey to reach the Naujinskoye Gorge of the Tuapse district. After 2 weeks of hard way, the yoke broke on the oxen Shaupuk Shalachov. The returnees Shapsugs stopped for a forced halt. It turned out that many had worn out their harness. It's very risky to continue the journey along such winding mountain ranges and bogs. Travelers visited the area of their halts, chestnut forests and an abundance of wild fruit trees, a mountain river and many pure springs. There is no better place to settle. At the meeting of elders, it was decided not to continue the path and build houses here, so the old Bolshoe Pseushkho was laid. At the same time, no one remembers the old name. It's possible that the families who lived in these places before the Caucasian War found themselves in the Ottoman Empire. That a similar legend about a broken wheel and a wagon that forced them to stop and then local residents established an owl often repeats itself, and not only among Shapsugs. For example, in Adygea, owl Kozet has the same story. It's known that the surname Daguf is related to a place near the owl Bolshoe Pseushkho and the village of Tsypka, but this family is represented only in Adygea today. In the village there are such quarters: Kobletam, northern outskirts; Tchako, southern outskirts; Khabroukatam, the center of the village; Tub, northeastern outskirts. This is the word Tuba that relates us to the place of Tuba, and the legend about the origin of the Circassian Shapsugs from the same places as the Abazeks at the upper Tsitsa river. It's known that Koblevs are former representatives of the Goya tribe, who hid their origin. Many famous people came from this owl. Among them is the talented archaeologist Madin Teshev, who discovered the Tuapse Stonehenge or the Temple of the Sun; Yakub Koblev, the world-famous Soviet athlete, the founder of one of the most popular sambo schools, was born and raised in Bolshoe Pseushkho. The life of the hero of the Soviet Union, Aida Mirachmizov, is connected with the history of the owl. You start your way full of fire and heart. On horseback the endless ways wait you. But remember that war is more faster than horse, and Circassians did not just settle horses. From countless battles, the soul got stronger, and you own your dagger skillfully. But remember, the word is sharper than knife, and Circassian just because did not reach dagger. Suddenly, by the fate, you became very rich, but your income is composed history. But remember that the word is expensive than treasure, Circassian lacks the people for consents, not money. Nowadays forget what it's true, and newness attracts people again and again. But remember the ancient Circassian laws: never break words you've given. Auls Maloye Pseushkho. His story is related in the same way and as in many villages with 1990. Today it's a large, young, developing village, unlike the Bolshoe Pseushkho, which is decreasing in the opposite. This is due to the fact that the road is more accessible and everything else, to contrast to the Bolshoe Pseushkho. As one old man from Bolshoe Pseushkho said, someday the big will become small and the small will become large. So it turned out in the end with these auls today. Maloye Pseushkho today more than Bolshoe Pseushkho. Regarding the name Pseushkho, its toponymy from Pseushkho mountain is taken at the basis, but how the toponymy translates, for example, the same Marin Teshev, Tuapse historian and archaeologist, translated more precisely. Meaning sounds like a deer pasture or something like that. Some translated it as a place of prayer to God, Kodesh, but this is very conditional. These places are also full of beautiful landscapes and antiquities in the form of dolmens and barrows. Like Bolshoe Pseushkho, the Auls Maloye Pseushkho got its name also from the river of the same name. Some people mistakenly believe that both villages are connected and the Maloye is a migrant from the Aul Bolshoe. This is not true. In fact, it's not. The first information about the settlement appeared in 1907, even earlier than the village of Bolshoe Pseushkho. In 1905, there were already 20 yards. The settlers came here also from Hajimuko and partly from the Takhtamukaysky district. Later families were evicted from Bolshoe Pseushkho. Before the Caucasian War, on the site of the modern settlement there existed Shapsug's aul Kodeshechab, which was destroyed during the hostilities and abandoned. On the map of 1970 he was listed under the same name, which indicates that among the returnees were representatives of local clans. Today the village of Maloye Pseushkho in the Circassian language continues to be called Kodeshechab, from Kodea shrub, Shekha deer, and Ne pasture, deer pasture, according to Teshev. Teshev also considered the name river Maloye Pseushkho wrong, called this river Chiaks. Meridukov associated the name with the translation place of offerings to god Kodesh. Also, this image is associated more with the sea and fish than with semi-steppe terrain. Today, a little more than 150 people live in the village. There is a good house of culture with dance groups, native language courses and doll exhibitions by local craftsmen. They are the youngest and smallest group. Not just strictly, the older group is busy today. The average in the village Georgievskaya, the eldest, is studying. They are students at night. Is everyone ready? Yes? Then get ready. Remember the whole picture. I understand that this is a new dance. Need to clean it, but we will try, yes? Yes. And was it okay? Do not be shy. Get ready. We saw two dance variations at the rehearsal today: girls' classical dance and dance of young men. This is one of the few lezgingas that exist in the Caucasus. Thanks, guys, you're great. Well, they need time to become really great. International Festival Circassian Stars in Moscow. This is a festival adding Circassian culture, and that festival is international. And we also have Lazarevsky Rodniki, a regional festival. We are there too, the first winners for many years. We go every year and have never returned without diplomas. In the international, guys from the diaspora participate. International is Turkey, Greece, Germany, and there are from Moldova and the Cossacks, all who want to participate. There are no schools. The children study in the neighboring village of Georgievskaya when the bus goes, including from Bolshoe and Pseushkho. But the mosque was not restored here, although it existed until the 1930s. In the far part of the village flows the river Napseotam, the name of which is associated with the old place of residence of the Circassian clan Napso. There are no special places of religious worship in the village. It's located on a flat area surrounded by pastures and hazelnut gardens. Maloye Pseushkho, the birthplace of the hero of the Soviet Union, Khagushev Ismail Khalalovich. The main street of the village is named after him. Today, mostly young and middle-aged families live in the village. There are almost no elders left. Many people prefer to live in Tuapse, since there is no special work in the village, and nevertheless it looks much more lively and active than in the neighboring Bolshoe Pseushkho, with a population difference of 2 times. Local children practice Circassian dance under the guidance of experienced teachers and successfully participate in all Russian and international competitions. It's a pride for themselves, their teachers and parents. This is a native of our village. He grew up here behind the clubhouse. Relatives, nephews live there today. The main street of the village, like houses with signs, is named after Khagushev. We are proud of him. He is our only hero of the Soviet Union, killed young on the internet. Little is written about him. We are glad because in Georgievskaya our employees, directors made a small video about him and participated with him at the event. Movie won first place in the province. At least we have this about him. Fighting as it was mounted, beautiful. This exhibition exists thanks to the work of our children, the craftsmen who live here. The head of folk arts and crafts, Zuret Pshanasheva, 4 times confirmed the title of exemplary. All this was done by the children, under her leadership. She has been working in culture for a long time. She started as a librarian, then she became a director of the House of Culture in Bolshoe Pseushkho. She is from here. She's from there. Today I wanted to be present, but sick. These works are painstakingly done by children. They have nowhere else to come. This is the only place to go. In the evenings we play tennis. This is the club of the day for her. We hold tournaments, checkers and chess. In total, the club has 4 creative circles, a folk applied studio, an exemplary group, a choreographic one. There are children of the mountains, a younger group, we saw it today. There is also an average and senior group. 2 times we engaged in Georgievskaya, so that there are more people in total. uh, 30, 34 people. There are 20 here now. These 34 people are dancers of Constellation group. There is a drama club mask. We put small scenes, we learn tongue twisters based on Circassian fairy tales, live. Circassian wedding redirecting play and repeat at small concerts. Once we went to the Istoki festival, where we took the first place and showed the bride theft ceremony and the wedding. For the first time, when the mask was opened, we staged Three Brothers, based on the Circassian fairy tales, and got second place also at the Theatrical Festival. Other guys immersed in tradition? Yes, immersed. All children and young men come. It's more difficult with students, but we adapt them. We adapt to them because they are expensive. We arrange classes in the evenings, on weekends, and sometimes on Skype we work remotely, if necessary. Now we are preparing for the regional festival, the benefit of Russia. The regional festival is now November 10th. We are preparing for it. Our accordion in there, and we make online connection with him. He plays from there, and here we play along. We have little time. He just comes over the once in weekend. In weekend, so that there is no lining and couldn't hit the face with dirt. You have accordion, and there you have someone who plays kamil, shchipshin. Most young people do not know how. We trained the drums ourselves, they helped us by sponsorship. We invited to do workshops who have a rumor they studied. The son of our teacher of the Circassian language himself wanted to learn by ear musical notation and is already playing. He passed several months and already plays all our tunes. Because he works hard, he must sit for many hours. Recently we were at the 8th International Festival of the Adygy Circassian Culture in Maikop and took the second place. All our achievements in these workbooks. Do I understand correctly? Do you even have students who have left and are studying somewhere and they still involved in cultures and do not break away from it? We get them hard, but many thanks to the teachers who make concessions. If we send letters, the Department of Culture helps us, our head of culture in the Georgievsky district. They write letters and education does not interfere, they let go. We study in Lazarevskaya, children in Maikop, and they come. Thank you.
И дом ее отныне далеко.
The village of Tsypka is located in the valley of the river Tsypka of the same name, a right tributary of the Tuapse river. Located 10 kilometers northeast at the regional center of Tuapse, the road connecting the cities of Tuapse and Maloye, as well as the Ramovir-Tuapse railway line, passes through it. The village got its name from the river. Hydronym Tsypka, Circassian Tseps or Ptseps, in its basis has two main versions of the origin. According to the first version, once a passerby took off his old, worn-out sheepskin coat and threw it into the river. The sheepskin wore on the river for a long time, making the water in it loosey. Hence, people began calling it Tseps, Loosey River. According to the second and most common version, the toponym of the river comes from the word Tseps, where Ps is fish and Psi is water, river. Thus, the toponym of the river can be translated as a river abundant in fish. Some experts note that it was an ordinary name, for example, as White River, a very common name, average. When there was no original name, they called it Fish River. Name Tsypka is common. An interesting story is connected with the legend of the death of the giant Akhin. In ancient times, at the confluence of the Tuapse and Tsypka rivers, a rich prince lived in the mountains and had a beautiful daughter. She had many suitors. Her father publicly announced that only that would get his daughter's hand who would jump from the mountain to the mountain across the valley of the river Tuapse. Many young people came to the call, but no one could fulfill the conditions. One day came Akhin, the giant. Climbing on up the mountain, Akhin leaned his inseparable staff into the bottom of the valley and jumped to the opposite side, and she became his wife. Some time passed, and Akhin decided to visit his father-in-law. Hearing about this, fearing father-in-law took property, livestock, a family, and ran along the beach to the south. He stopped at the river Shkhafit. Akhin followed along with his property and herds. He stopped also in the valley of Shkhafit river. Akhin did not notice his little neighbor-in-law. Akhin dug his parking lot in a deep moat with water. To go outside, he leaned on the bottom of the moat with his staff and jumped over to the other side. Once, the father-in-law tied up two felled trees, moved over the moat, and making his way to his daughter, asked when Akhin was sleeping. In the second parish, he sawed a staff in several places. Akhin, having woken up, jumped over a ditch, fell and drowned. And on the spot of the death of Akhin, to this day is the village of Akhintam, the place of Akhin. Tsypka never had the status of the owl. Before the Caucasian War, there were settlements of Circassians-Shapsugs, most of which are unknown today. Only one last name, Daguf, is found today in Adygea, is aware of its origin from these places. At the end of the 19th century, land on the site of the future village of Tsypka was distributed by shares between the inhabitants of the village of Bolshoe and Pseushkho. During the construction of the railway into Tuapse at the beginning of the 20th century, these places become more attractive for life. Considering the overpopulation of the village of Bolshoe and Pseushkho in those years, some young families from there choose to move to a new location. But only after the revolution and the civil war, the first high-grade houses appeared in Tsypka, and the village received official status. Tsypka is the center of Viliaminovsk rural settlement, including all the villages along the Tuapse river to the city. There is a dolmen on its coat of arms. Today, the population of the village is more than 750 people, but only 20% of them are descendants of the Circassian first settlers. A very powerful cattle breeding state farm operated in these places. The availability of work and the proximity of the highway and railway attract specialists from all over the country. Moreover, children from all the villages from Tuapse to Tsypka study there, since the village is the center of a wide Viliaminovsky rural settlement. There is a very professional house of culture in Tsypka, where children and adults learn to dance, all the ethnic group represented in the settlement, and the Circassian dancing can be performed by Russian guys and vice versa. Marina Kurashvinova, a famous seamstress, is a master of her craft who helps in sewing national clothes. Thanks to her, the village has become known throughout the world. Clothing exhibitions and dance groups consistently occupy leading positions in various international and all-Russian competitions. I have been working in this club for more than 9 years. Having come here, we somehow got together with the children and decided to sew national costumes. After that, a dance group was created on the basis of the Golden Dagger. Then another group, Pearls of the Caucasus, Pearls of the Caucasus appeared. Children are engaged from 4th to 25th years old. Groups of more than 35 people. We sew costumes with children, consult, choose. At the exhibitions we sew little costumes so that they feel with their hands how it's done. We create such things here. Then, on the basis of children's costume, we sew more adult costumes, which they already wear and dance in them. We also have a collection of costumes for the exhibition. There are wedding dresses, prancing clothes, stylized costumes, dresses, flags, modern costumes, and we have a dress that is more than 100 years old in our collection. We have restored it and are exposing in more for ceremonies. When we show a national ceremony or a wedding, for example, on a yacht, we return on a Mother's Day. We do the same for the other teams. We have Russian groups, the adult group, Hope, and children's groups. We try to make costumes for children's groups with our own hands, so they more valuable them. Love and care for them. We receive the title of the national, called the Needle Setter, studio of the national costume. We received the title now. We are laureates in choreography and we will still achieve great success, I hope, with our children. We produce all kinds of souvenir dolls, embroidery, and here we have the smallest kids have created here such customs. In them, the smallest kids are dancing here in the suits. This is our last work. And tell me, while embroidery, making costumes, you separately order these embroideries applications where? Applications we take in makeup. We advise in makeup in special stylized stores where we sell appliques for costumes, metal ones such as breastplates, belts. We advise choose and already use. It could have been done by ourselves, but since there are a lot of costumes sewn and the team needs to be worn, we use an applique. Well, here is a display with the cord. We make it with the children, with ornaments, stones. We sew it so that it looks beautiful from the stage, and we sew it with stones. We ourselves and doing just such. It's impossible for us to do much of this as the crowd goes. This is stylized costume for youth overplay for a girl. These are the patterns we do with the children. Here you can see that they embroider handles. If this is finished application, then everything else they already do is handmade. The thread is taken silver and they embroider this ornament with a beautiful picture. Looking at the costumes, we came to the conclusion that we need to renew all this. Traditions, customs, the children know their language, that children know exactly their ancestral roots.
Чтобы дети знали свой язык, чтобы дети знали именно исконные корни ихние,
We also made exhibitions about our family. They found out who their grandfather is, who the grandmother is, what kind of people they are, so that the children know where they come from, so that they know how to communicate, respect the elders, honor their customs, their rights, so they know that in life they will sow and that is exactly remains, so that not only they, but their children and grandchildren should preserve all customs and rituals, so as not to lose them, so to speak, so that in life they know who they are, where they come from, and that they remain so. And for this we study the culture, study the customs, study the dances, everything connected with the traditions and customs, try to preserve and study. Marina, how did you get involved? How did you training in sewing work start? When there was a daughter's concert, we made a costume for a sketch. They sewed a year. She performed, and now there was an interest to resume all this, because many parents also become interested, asked their children to take part too. Once they made perform, they made a second time and somehow went one after the other, created many other costumes. We participated in many events, traveled, acted in boarding houses on the coast for guests. It was very interesting. Everyone came up to us and asked, interested in culture, customs, and so it went with us. And not only Circassians are engaged in it, and Russian children and Armenian nationality, up to 17 nationalities we have in the club. They all like it, they do it all. Parents take part in concerts as well. We cook Circassian cuisine, we introduce them to recipes. Everything is moving forward with pleasure, and I hope that is... How much do you do? It's for creativity, 9 years in costumes and dance. Tell us a little more about the rewards. What are your highlights? We received regional awards, we have a lot of diplomas, practically we wherever possible participate. We are 4 laureates in choreography and dance. We have a lot of awards, especially for costumes. This year we took the first place in the Krasnodar Territory and received a grant. В этом году мы заняли первое место по Краснодарскому краю и получили грант. Is that your name, Golden? We have a studio, Igolnitsa Uzornitsa, studio of national costume and dance group Golden Dagger and Pearls of the Caucasus. Do you get more regional awards? 2 years in a row received regional ones. There are international ones, we participate and guests come. Here the weather school always invites us, we make an exhibition for guests, and this is usually their international event. And our exhibition and dancing they like very much. Every year we take part in all educational institutions where children study, where we are invited, where we never refuse to anyone. In the province you got first place. Yes, this year the first place was taken at the regional competition in the national costume. There were more than 50 teams received a grant. Thank you very much. So today we are in the village of Najigo, in the valley of the Makopsa river, very picturesque places in the upper reaches of the river. According to different versions, the word Najigo comes from the old Circassian Naga in the old Shapsug variant, which apparently is connected with the surname Nagi or Nagoi in a different way. It was fixed by James Bell on the coast of Makapse, and there lived a nobleman named Indara Nagoi. Well, differently translated. For example, Teshov translated the opposite, the tears of the old heart, apparently because the old men were driven away from here at the end of Caucasian War. Here the Shapsugs lived, and in 1834 they were driven out of these places. In the 18th, when they were allowed to return here, they allegedly asked for the very old place where they used to live and settle here. And someone on the contrary gives the surname associated with the Nogai or Tatars, allegedly that there were pastures here in the headwaters. It can be said otherwise. Lavrov described Leonid Lavrov in the 1920s that he received information that this owl was settled again in the 1880s by people from Bolshoe Pseushkho. As you can see, the beautiful picturesque nature is here. Owl is quite small and calm, and now we will try to investigate it. Owl Najigo is located in the northern outskirts of the Lazarevsky district of Greater Sochi on the right bank of the Makopse River, 15 kilometers from the mouth of the river. Its Russian name is Gorny. The road to the owl is quite picturesque. It passes by ancient oaks and cemeteries. Approximately in the middle there is a hanged bridge to the other side of the river where the recreation center with Circassian dancing, a museum and a kitchen is located. Там готовят кухню, там показывают разные мероприятия, проводятся мероприятия. Там находится довольно интересный этнографический музей адыгской культуры и быта. The village of Najigo itself is located in a picturesque valley, located in compact houses on the hills. Residents of the village mainly work in Tuapse or Lazarevsky and prefer to live in Najigo at the weekend or just spend the night. Although the village is very cozy and comfortable, everything you need to live here is the road passes new, easy to get. Дорога туда проходит довольно современная, и добраться туда можно достаточно. Around persimmon blooms, chestnuts and hazelnuts grow. There is also its own ancient sacred oak, under which prayers and owl assemblies were held early. The picturesque chemistry is located on a long street leading into the waterfalls. Like all the chemistries of the Circassians-Shapsugs, it's located on a prominent slope. There is also a small museum here which is currently under reconstruction. There are plans to expand it and add Circassian cuisine. Tourists love to walk from the village of Najigo to the village of Maloye Pseushkho through the watershed reach of Perus, popular tourist road. From the place where Hamish Tepe fell into the Makopse River, the Shapsug owl was located up to its source bearing the name of Najigo or Najiguche. Naji is a modern Circassian literary form from the old Shapsug Low Circassian Naga. It's characteristic that the left tributary river Makopse, which flows into it 2 kilometers below the village of Najigo, bears the old name Nagu. Such a coincidence cannot be an accident. It's most likely that in these toponyms the Shapsug family from Nagu, which prevailed in this area, was imprinted in the past. According to Bell, a prominent leader in the Nagoi lived in the Makopse River. Teshov translated toponym Najigo from Circassian Ne I, G old and Gu heart. The name originated, according to Teshov, from the fact that when the Circassians deported to Kuban in 1864, returned to their places of origin in 1880. In 1880, the old men, despite the fact that they were allowed to settle elsewhere, insisted that they should be settled to the old place where they lived before eviction to the Kuban. Lavrov reports that the secondary settlement of the village of Najigo occurred at the end of the 19th century by immigrants from the village of Bolshoe and Pseushkho. According to ethnographic data, In 1881, some of them moved to the place of the former Aul in the valley of the Makopse River. For a long time, Najigo on the maps was designated not as an independent village, but as outside settlements of Bolshoe and Pseushkho. Above, on one of the left tributaries of the river, there was an abandoned village of Maloye Najigo, Circassian-Shapsugs, which the returning residents used for their economic needs. However, the newly formed village of Najigo was included in the list of settlements of the Black Sea region only in 1895, where it was listed as a detachment of the village of Bolshoe and Pseushkho, outskirts. 1800, 73 people lived in the village of Najigo. In 1905, there were 12 country yards in the village with a total population of 79 people. Before the establishment of Soviet power, there was a wooden mosque in the village. In early 1930, it was the beginning of the atheistic policies in the USSR. The mosque was converted into a school. Now there is nothing left in this place. In the mid-1930s, the mosque is no longer restored. A native of the Najigo village, Isach Mizov, who had spent more than half a century living with the development of the education system in Sochi, at different times he worked as a simple teacher, head of the pedagogical office of Shapsug's regional education department, supervised educational institutions in Makopse, Soviet-Kvadje, Zubova Shel and Katkova Shel, built schools. He was also a veteran of the Second World War, having passed through the war with the battles of Fort Tuapse, who had medals. It's said that in times of repression he managed to save the inhabitants of Najigo. When asked about his kulaki and suspicious citizens who had to be repressed according to a plan, he replied that except for himself he had no one to point to, and the owl was left alone. Thanks to Isach Mizov, on his initiative, many schools were built and many generations of residents of the coastal and mountain villages received a decent education. Today, about 150 people live in the village. There are no schools. Children study in the village of Makopse, located on the outskirts of the valley to the sea. Many moved there. The House of Culture operates, but there are no permanent dance groups. It's rather a gathering place for the owl. The activity of local public activists headed by Shamsuddin Shkhalakov helps the development and well-being. Aul Shkhafit, a small village located on the right bank of the valley of Ashe River, 2 kilometers from its mouth. Here at the mouth also located small resort village of Ashe, in which many Circassians-Shapsugs of the Ashe Valley live or simply work here in the summer season. Aul is located on the ridge along the road up to the Rocky Pass, which until 1970s blocked the way to the upper reaches of the river. The old quarter is located at the very top. In the years after the Caucasian War, Caucasian liner battalions were stationed in the valley of the river Ashe to search for and evict the remaining Circassians-Shapsugs from the mountains and for subsequent control of those who were allowed to return for settlement. The commander of the 1st Battalion was Captain Mukhortov, who acquired a plot of land in the valley of the river Ashe. He adopted the Circassian orphan boy and retired. On the acquired lands, he built a cottage and arranged a farm, vineyards and gardens where Circassian-Shapsugs from the nearest villages worked. Thus this place got the name of Mukhortova Polyana, Mukhortov's Glade. The Circassian-Shapsugs greatly respected Mukhortov despite his participation in hostilities at the end of the Caucasian War. Apparently, this war greatly changed his views. At the beginning of the 20th century, his adopted son died from the disease, and then the old Mukhortov and his spouse left. The locals built a family necropolis for his family. It was preserved and located next to the dolmen in the eastern part of the village, in the territory of a private house. The crypt is open to tourists. The name Shkhafit appeared after the revolution. In 19 1920, the former lands of Mukhortov were requisitioned by the state. In 1925, at the request of the Shapsugsky Revolutionary Committee, part of the former estate of Mukhortov, approximately 40 hectares, was transferred to the Shapsugsky district to organize a new resettlement settlement. Among the first settlers were the families of the Shkhalavs, Gvashevs, Shkhabo, Heshkho, Sizo, Khusht, Toch, and Liv. In 1930, 103 people lived in the village. Families from the villages of Kalezh and Najigo moved here. Teshev derived the name Shkhafit on the basis of the Circassian Shkha, head, feet, free, with the general translation as freedom. Today, the owl belongs to the inner city territory of Sochi, therefore it's difficult to understand how many people live in here. 200-250 people. The owl has its own school and cultural center, also the main dance groups, as elsewhere in the Lazarevsky district, gathered for classes and performances in the Adige Center in the House of National Cultures in the village of Lazarevskaya. The main office of the once huge organization Shapsug, now divided into parts and mostly inactive, is located in Shkhafit. Former social activist Elder Murdin Teshev, expert of the Circassian Shapsug history and much respected person, lives in the village of Shkhafit. Recently, representatives of the Circassian diaspora of Turkey came to him on motorcycles and sent greetings from the public Circassian organizations of Turkey. A little further to the north is a small Circassian settlement Hatlape, also referred to the Migdro district of Sochi. The name of the owl from the Circassian language is translated as a dog's paw, from he, a dog, and lepe, a paw. This place is popular with tourists for two reasons. Here are the White Rocks, a natural monument alluring with its beauty. To the north of here are located dolmens of the Kapibga tract. The sort of them is on the ridge, where not every tourist will go. It's special because it does not have a top cover, and initially turned upside down. Here in the vicinity there are forges of ancient dolmen, blacksmiths and blacksmiths' graves filled with metal slag. According to some versions, the name of the Asher River is translated as weapon, hinting at the presence of an ancient culture of blacksmiths using low-grade iron siderite.
Послевоенные годы, когда побережье стало зарастать,
when the coast began to grow, agriculture died down. The region does not receive economic development. The Tsarist government decided to return those Circassians who lived in these places and were expelled. By the way, these villages are not far from Krasnodar. Afipsi, Pseituk, Hashtuk, Panahes. These villages settled from those Shapsugs that were driven out of here during the Russian-Caucasian War. Until now, these old men call us Hekush, which means feathery, old land. That's why after 10-12 years they began with such tacit consent of the emperor and local authorities, the Circassians began to return to their historic homeland. Take my native owl Bolshoe Pseushkho. They lived after the expulsion in the so-called aul Hadjimukhabl. Now this place is called Dondukovskaya. It happened around 1874-75, well, in short, 10 years after the war. Now, if we take the Kichmines, they managed to hide. And when they were in hopeless situations, there was nothing to eat, nothing to wear, they left. For years they hid and started to pile around military posts at Tuapse and Adler in the city of Sochi. If you entered the museum, there are the first 6 old people who returned with the official permission of the Tsarist military authorities. If you take the village of Agui, they made peace during the war. It means they were like pacified Circassians. They didn't live far from village, but they lived about 15 kilometers in the mountains. Above. And the current village was formed after the Russian-Caucasian War. Because also the emperor allowed the Circassians to return. There was a regime to not settle the Circassians closer than 10 kilometers from the sea. I don't know what they were so afraid of, but they wanted to create a barrier between the Circassians and Turkey. Russians thought that we were especially adherents of Turkey, but the Circassians also beat them, because the Turks repeatedly tried to seize the Caucasus by military means. To unite Gentiles of Central Asia, to create the great state of Turan, and this desire is still secretly worn by the Turks. And even Aliyev's father and son are openly speaking about this case. He's an Azerbaijani president, they are almost Turks Muslims. Therefore, the Russians were afraid that we had close contacts, but we finally broke off relations with Turks. Because in the course of the 100 Years' War, they were never satisfied with the repeated requests of delegations from the Circassians. Psebe, they returned from Takhtamukai. Here they lived in exile, returned here. And such villages as Tsypka, Najigo, Golovinka, these are derivatives from the Bolshoe Pseushkho after the Russian-Caucasian War. They simply abandoned, and the village Shkhafit moved away from Hajiko. That's the way they took root. And in Voley, here Hajiko, Kalezh and Shkhafit, they too returned from there, some from Takhtamukai, some from Dandukovsk, some of these places. Here, apart from these few Kichmai families, no one remained. And the peaced Aguis. They concluded an agreement with the military authorities and stayed were not evicted everywhere. Aul Kalezh, as well as Ligot, which is in fact an integral part, is an old Shapsug aul. In its present form, it was founded in the 1870s. Prior to this, here in the Asher Valley, there was a very densely populated place. There were a lot of villages, Shapsug farmsteads stretched for a length of 11 kilometers. At the end of the Caucasian War, of course, here the entire population was forced to live under pressure from the Russian troops in Turkey, and some fled to the mountains. and here in the mountain they were just yet. Here stood a detachment of Russian troops, which was engaged in the search for those who escaped and will expel them to Turkey. Later, when they were allowed not to expel from here already those who remained in the mountains went down, the Shapsug families who survived. Part returned from Kuban, those who were resettled to the Kuban, from the village of Shabano-Khabal, and settled again here with these troops. This village was called Alexandrovskoye. Then, in 18th, these Russian troops left from here, and here are three Shapsug villages. Khadjiko, modern Kalezh, and Ligod formed one settlement, Alexandrovskoye. In Soviet time, it became known as Krasno-Alexandrovsky and was divided into first, second, and third Krasno-Alexandrovsky. An interesting name is the village Kalezh. The word Kalezh is an old fortress. This is due to the fact that here on the Kalezhstan plateau, which is called so across the river on the other side of the Ashe River, there is an old dolmen town. So-called remnants of the group of dolmens, Kromlech, Stela, Mengirs. On the edge of the plateau, even dry masonry has been preserved. It's believed that Celebi mentioned it as an old fortress in these places. Who built it? There are various disputes on this score, and from the place the Kalezh owl got its name. The Kalezh owl is located on the left bank of the Ashe River, about 12 kilometers from its mouth in the spurs of the Ashe. It was here, from the coast of 11 miles, as stated in one of the Russian military documents of the mid-19th century, was that the bulk of the population of the Ashe Valley nested. Many owls were also noted about the confluence of the two main tributaries of the Ashe River, the Nauji and the Bekeshe. After the end of the Caucasian War, almost all of the surviving local population was evicted into the Ottoman Empire, and the remnants of the Circassians who continued to hide in remote mountain wooded areas were pursued and also evicted to the lower reaches of the Kuban, or the Ottoman Empire, and the mountaineers who continued to hide in the mountains took place in the Nauji Valley. The captured Circassians were forcibly sent to the Ottoman Empire or attributed to the villages of the Shapsug Coastal Foot Battalion, based on the coastal space from Gelendzhik to Tuapse in 1864. In 1866-74, similar tasks were performed by the troops of the Caucasian Lanier battalions stationed in the middle and upper parts of main rivers coasts in their basins. According to some information, in the middle of 19th century, along the river Ashe, starting from the mouth, one huge village stretched 20 kilometers, which was called Ligod, consisted of 9 united settlements, each of which was inhabited by a separate genus. Each genus was composed of 20 large families of 60 people each. That is, the population of the valley of river Ashe in the middle of 19th century was about 10,000 people. Circassians-Shapsugs call the whole left bank of the river Ashe as Ligod, and not just a small owl with such an official name located above the Owl Kalezh. The present Owl Kalezh was founded by the highest commandment as a settlement of Alexandrovskoye, named after the king of Veliminovsky district as the location of one of the battalions. In the village of Alexandrovskoye, the remnants of three highlanders began to settle, as well as Circassians-Shapsugs returning from the village of Asret-Khabal, now the village of Dakhovskaya. Former dwelling places along the river Nauji and Bekeshe were occupied by Russian farms. It is believed that in the lowland, in the place of the modern village, there were no permanent villages. Locals claim that in the 19th century there were more than 80 dolmens here. Many of them were destroyed or used for construction of foundations and walls. It's rumored that the Komsomol school in the 1930s, 3 floors, was built of limestone dolmen plates. The remains of ancient structures are still visible to the locals in the country yards of houses on the local area, or located at the base of the foundations of outbuildings and adjoining sites. So, Felitsyn already mentioned the Krasno-Alexandrovskoye village. A significant part of the Ashe Shapsugs from Kuban returned to the newly organized village. Representatives of other Circassian tribes returning from Turkey also settled here. The word Kalezh in the Circassian language means old city, where Kale means city and Zhi old. In this version of the name of the place name probably likely due to existed in the past on the right a high bank of the river Ashe, city walls of the medieval time, and bore the Circassian name Kalezh. Indeed, on the right side of the Kalezh there is low Kalezh plateau where you can still see the ruins of dolmens, 1/2 meter menhir with a convex image, and a small dry stone wall over a cliff, which is considered to be remains of a fortress. Residents prefer a different translation of the name, which sounds roguely like the place of old graves. This is associated with dolmens, and the fortress wall is considered a replica of the Soviet era, when a hazelnut garden was located at the site of the ruined dolmens, and the stones were a fence against cattle falling from the rock. Kalezh was an integral part of the large village of Alexandrovskaya since 1920, Krasno-Alexandrovskaya, and only after this date was singled out in the second Krasno-Alexandrovskaya, and since 1993 it was named Kalezh. In fact, Kalezh, Najigo, and Legod represent a continuous settlement connected by streets and houses. The upper part, northeast of the village, behind the tourist waterfalls, are still the ruins of the Russian farm Chertov Most, which disappeared in the 1915s. On the site of Kalezh there is a restaurant and the witch's cave with the possibility to swim inside the boat. There is a legend that a footpath in it leads to the village of Bolshoe and Pseushkho, 12 kilometers to the northwest. There is also a mountain of old people with a popular legend from the North Epic about throwing old people off a cliff. In the village of Kalezh there is no school, the children study in the neighboring village Najigo. At the same time there is some competition between auls. Some even tell the legend that the first settlers of Najigo came later and the residents of Kalezh didn't let them in, forcing them to choose another wali. They did not allow them to settle above because they didn't want, when they wash their hands, the water flowed down to us. At the same time, there is a temperature difference between the valleys, also the distance is negligible, only 1 kilometer. In Najigo, on the southern slope of the hill is always significantly warmer than in Kalezh. Earlier, residents of Kalezh lived above where the main street of the village of the god, Nart Street, is now going. Over time, they went down below. Division into an ancestral quarters such as Tu or Nibu is also preserved. Until 1930, there was also a mosque which was destroyed. The Komsomol school appeared in the same year, when it became too difficult to massive transport children to study in Tuapse, and when Kalezh became the center of the Shapsug National District. It existed before the earthquake of 1959, and all the Circassians-Shapsugs of the region studied there. After its destruction, Finnish houses were built, but they were not used for a long time. The problem is that the communication with civilization for a long time was limited by the rock with the quarries of Mijo nuts, because of which the road was on foot and difficult to reach. There is even a saying that culture and civilization stumbled over this rock on the way to the villages of Ashe. In the 1970s, it was blown up to build the road. Since then, everything has changed. Today, almost 400 people live in the village. There are Russian families from the first settlers assimilated in the era of the Caucasian War, and even artists are found.